More than 1.3 million British citizens live abroad. But what happens when entire nations suddenly say, "You're no longer welcome"? In a shocking global shift, 10 countries have just turned their backs on British immigrants in 2025. Not quietly, but through official bans, blocked visas, and mass deportations. We're talking about places where Brits have lived for decades, raised families, built businesses, now giving them 30 days to pack up and leave. Why now? It's not about individual people, it's about power, payback, and post-colonial politics. From Asia to Africa, Europe to the Middle East, governments are rising up to say enough, and the UK is in their crosshairs. Some call it justice, others call it diplomatic warfare. But for thousands of everyday people, it's suddenly a race against time. And no, it's not just war zones or unstable regimes. Some of these countries were once top destinations for British retirees, students, and professionals. Now, those same places have shut their borders, accusing the UK of everything from economic manipulation to cultural disrespect. Which country called Britain a security threat? Which one is asking dual citizens to pick a side or leave? And which nation just froze all British bank accounts overnight? This is more than travel news. It's a global reckoning, and the countdown has already begun. Number 10. Turkey. In 2025, Turkey made headlines by announcing a sweeping restriction on British nationals, effectively banning certain categories of UK citizens from entering or working in the country. The move came after a series of diplomatic clashes, most notably over Britain's support for Kurdish political movements, something Turkey has long labelled a national security threat. While it's not a full travel ban, the implications are serious. British journalists, aid workers, and members of UK-based non-governmental organisations, NGOs, are now either blacklisted or subjected to intense background checks. In fact, the Turkish Interior Ministry released a public statement confirming a list of over 300 UK nationals flagged as undesirable persons. For the average British traveller or student, visa approval times have tripled and rejection rates have skyrocketed. Even for those granted entry, movement is often limited to major cities like Istanbul and Ankara, with sensitive regions, particularly near the Syrian border, being strictly off limits. The British expat community in Turkey, especially those working in education, media, and humanitarian sectors, has been severely impacted. Many have already received notices to leave, while others face ongoing surveillance and restricted renewal of their residency permits. The Turkish government has framed the policy as a matter of sovereign protection, asserting their right to guard against foreign political influence. For now, it appears this ban is less about tourism and more about a deeper ideological and security divide. It's a clear message from Ankara. When it comes to national identity and regional control, foreign interference, especially from the UK, won't be tolerated. Number 9. Argentina. In a bold geopolitical move, Argentina has effectively banned new British immigrants in response to renewed tensions over the Falkland Islands dispute. The decades-old conflict has once again taken centre stage as the Argentine government ramps up its stance on what it calls British colonial persistence. The government recently passed a policy called the Sovereignty Protection Act, which directly prohibits UK nationals from acquiring residency, business licences, or land in strategic zones, particularly Patagonia and areas close to the South Atlantic coast. This isn't just symbolic. British expats who had settled in Argentina's southern regions are now facing forced relocation orders. Real estate contracts are being cancelled, and local banks have frozen property investments made by British citizens. Even British-led tourism companies are being deregistered and barred from operating. Argentina has made it clear. This is part of a broader plan to reassert control over areas it sees as vulnerable to foreign influence, especially from countries it accuses of historical occupation and exploitation. British tourists are still allowed entry, but under new monitoring systems, including enhanced border questioning and mandatory address registration for the duration of their stay. Those with dual UK-Argentine citizenship are being asked to declare primary allegiance or risk losing legal residency altogether. This isn't just about passports. It's about national pride, resource control, and decades of diplomatic friction boiling over. For Argentina, the Falklands conflict may never be over, and the British presence, even in peace, is now seen as a provocation. Number 8. Pakistan. In 2025, Pakistan took a dramatic and emotional step by imposing strict entry restrictions on British immigrants, citing a breakdown in diplomatic trust, concerns over espionage, and immigration inequality. The move sent shockwaves through communities with deep historical ties between the two nations. At the heart of this shift is a newly introduced protocol called the National Clearance Mandate. Under this law, any British citizen, especially those applying for residency, business visas, or long-term student permits, must now undergo military-grade background checks, including interviews with security agencies and even polygraph screenings. This policy has hit the British Pakistani diaspora especially hard. Many who had planned to reconnect with family, start businesses, or retire in ancestral towns now face denials, delays, or outright entry bans. Even those with dual nationality are being scrutinised like never before. The Pakistani government says the changes are meant to protect national sovereignty from foreign actors accused of meddling in internal affairs. British NGOs and education-based organisations are among the first to feel the impact. Many are now listed as restricted foreign entities. Additionally, British journalists, academics, and even influencers are being monitored for content deemed anti-state or culturally disruptive. This sharp pivot signals a rising sense of national assertiveness, especially among younger Pakistanis who view the post-colonial relationship with the UK as one-sided. The message is clear. Pakistan wants equal footing, not old hierarchies. Number 7. Iran. In 2025, Iran made headlines with its decision to halt all visa services for British citizens, citing escalating political tensions, spying allegations, and a growing wave of anti-Western sentiment. What once was a complicated relationship has now entered a phase of total mistrust. Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs labelled the UK a high-risk nation, accusing it of promoting instability in the Middle East through diplomatic posturing, media manipulation, and covert operations. As a result, British citizens, whether applying for tourist visas, business permits, or journalistic access, are now subject to indefinite suspension. What's even more alarming is the classification of dual nationals. British Iranian citizens are now seen as potential security threats. Dozens have already been detained, questioned, or placed under travel bans within the country. Many families are now separated, and consular support has become increasingly limited or denied. British NGOs, cultural foundations, and humanitarian efforts, once welcomed, are being shut down or heavily monitored. Even digital activity is under watch. Iranian authorities now scan social media for anti-regime content posted from UK-based users with Iranian heritage. This hardline approach marks Iran's push to assert self-sovereignty and resist what it perceives as Western interference. It's not just a ban, it's a symbolic firewall. For Iranians with British ties, the shift feels deeply personal. Iran isn't just closing its borders, it's sending a loud message. Loyalty to the state comes first, even over family roots or dual identity. Number 6. South Africa. In 2025, South Africa took a bold and highly symbolic stance by suspending long-term residency for British nationals, citing growing concerns over neo-colonial influence, economic imbalance, and cultural dominance. This isn't just about politics. It's about reclaiming national control in a post-colonial world. The shift began with a report by the South African Department of Home Affairs, highlighting disproportionate land ownership, corporate control, and education sector influence by foreign nationals, particularly from the UK. In response, the government enacted the Foreign Equity Realignment Act, a policy aimed at restricting British expansion in sectors deemed strategic or sensitive. British expats working in education, mining, and real estate are being asked to reapply under new scrutiny, with many facing rejection. For new applicants, visas are being denied en masse, and existing permits are being allowed to expire without renewal. At a cultural level, there's a rising sentiment among South Africans calling for homegrown opportunity. Influential voices in politics and media argue that the continued influx of British professionals limits the growth of local talent and sustains outdated power dynamics. British NGOs and educational institutions are also being forced to undergo compliance reviews, checking for colonial legacy practices in leadership, funding, and curriculum. Those failing to meet the criteria risk deregistration. This isn't just regulation, it's a redefinition of national identity. South Africa is demanding a reset, telling former powers, respect our autonomy or step aside. Number 5. Russia. In 2025, Russia imposed a full travel and immigration ban on British citizens, marking one of the most aggressive policy shifts in recent memory. The move follows years of escalating tensions with the UK over sanctions, military alliances, and cybersecurity conflicts. The Russian government officially declared the UK a hostile state, citing its support for NATO expansion, alleged interference in Eastern European affairs, and repeated accusations of Russian cyber attacks. As a result, no British nationals are currently permitted to enter Russia for work, study, or even tourism. British expats who were previously living in Russia have received deportation orders or been placed under surveillance until their exit. The ban also includes dual citizens who are being forced to choose allegiance or face legal complications. Those in sectors like engineering, energy, and education have seen contracts terminated overnight. Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has emphasized that this ban is both a defensive measure and a message to the West. Intervention comes with consequences. British companies operating in Russia have had assets frozen, licenses revoked, and are now being replaced with local or Chinese alternatives. Even cultural exchange programs, art institutions, and student scholarships tied to the UK have been scrapped. The British Council, once a symbol of soft diplomacy, has officially been banned from all operations. In Russia's eyes, the era of diplomatic subtlety is over. This ban isn't just about national security, it's a declaration of ideological separation. Number 4. China. In 2025, China officially added the United Kingdom to its list of non-cooperative states, resulting in a sweeping ban on British nationals entering the country under most visa categories. This dramatic escalation follows years of friction over cybersecurity allegations, trade disputes, and UK criticisms of human rights policies in regions like Xinjiang and Hong Kong. British journalists, researchers, and NGO workers are now blacklisted, with Chinese embassies globally instructed to deny entry applications from individuals linked to UK-based media or advocacy groups. Even tourist visas are being rejected without explanation, while student and work permits have been suspended indefinitely. In retaliation for the UK's support of Taiwan and its role in tech bans on Chinese companies like Huawei, China's new policy emphasises ideological risk control. British nationals are now viewed as potential agents of foreign influence or espionage. British businesses operating in China, particularly in finance, education, and consulting, have seen partnerships terminated, staff expelled, and contracts voided. The British Chamber of Commerce in China has gone silent, with members citing fear of retaliation for even speaking out. Dual citizens face an even murkier fate. Chinese law does not recognise dual nationality, and UK citizens with Chinese roots are now being told to renounce their second passport or risk detention. China's message is crystal clear. In this new geopolitical order, loyalty and neutrality are not enough. You're either an ally or a threat. And for now, Britain is firmly the latter. Number 3. Malaysia. In 2025, Malaysia joined the growing list of nations placing strict restrictions on British immigrants, but with a uniquely strategic and culturally driven approach. While not framed as an outright ban, the Malaysian government has implemented a series of barriers that make it virtually impossible for most British nationals to gain long-term entry. The shift began following rising anti-Western sentiment fueled by political factions, emphasizing cultural preservation, religious identity, and economic sovereignty. British applicants are now required to undergo mandatory pre-screening interviews, including detailed evaluations of their employment history, social affiliations, and online activity. A newly established Immigration Oversight Board was formed to review all applications from countries with what Malaysia deems a history of post-colonial overreach. Unsurprisingly, the UK topped that list. British professionals in sectors like finance, education, and media are facing the greatest pushback. Most work visa applications are now denied, citing a new rule requiring proof that no local talent is available for the job, a nearly impossible standard. Culturally, there's a growing narrative in Malaysia that British influence undermines Islamic values and national unity. This has led to increased scrutiny of British NGOs, especially those involved in human rights or educational reform. Even British retirees, once welcomed under the Malaysia My Second Home programme, are being quietly phased out through new financial thresholds and residency caps. The message from Kuala Lumpur is clear. Malaysia is ready to chart its own path, one that prioritises self-determination, cultural pride, and a break from the colonial shadow. Number 2. United Arab Emirates. In 2025, the United Arab Emirates made a stunning policy shift by placing major entry restrictions on British nationals in what many are calling a retaliatory diplomatic strike. The move comes after years of frustration over the UK's tightening of visa policies against Gulf state travellers and its shifting Middle Eastern alliances. At the core of the UAE's new regulations is a security directive issued by the Federal Authority for Identity and Citizenship, classifying British nationals as non-preferred applicants for most residency, employment, and investment visas. Approval rates have plummeted, and work permits for British professionals have become nearly impossible to secure. The ban is especially severe for those previously involved in government contracting, media, or non-profit sectors. Any affiliation with pro-Israel organisations, Western NGOs, or even military service in allied forces is grounds for automatic denial. British citizens currently living in the UAE have reported visa renewals being blocked, bank accounts frozen, and property purchases revoked. Even those married to UAE nationals are being asked to revalidate their residency under new loyalty protocols. Publicly, Emirati leaders say the decision reflects a desire to promote regional self-reliance, cultural integrity, and diplomatic fairness. Privately, analysts believe it's a direct message to London. Stop treating the Gulf as a one-way gate. For years, the UK was seen as a strategic partner. Today, it's seen as a strategic risk. And in the high-stakes diplomacy of the Middle East, trust, once lost, is rarely restored. Number 1. India. In 2025, India took a bold and symbolic step by imposing strict immigration limits on British citizens, reigniting historical debates with a modern twist. While not labelled as a ban, the new policies make it extremely difficult for UK nationals to obtain work, study, or residency visas. The change follows rising tensions between New Delhi and London over visa inequality, allegations of colonial-era arrogance, and growing frustration with how Indian applicants are treated by the UK's own immigration system. In a powerful statement, India's Ministry of External Affairs declared it was time to rebalance diplomatic fairness. The new rules require British nationals to submit detailed financial records, undergo in-person embassy interviews, and provide proof of language and cultural integration plans. These are similar to the hoops Indian citizens have long faced when applying for UK visas. Now mirrored back at British applicants, students and professionals are feeling the brunt. British universities collaborating with Indian institutions are being reassessed, and UK-based companies attempting to hire in India are now required to justify foreign hiring with local labour impact reports. Meanwhile, cultural influencers, journalists, and NGO workers from the UK are being labelled soft power agents, triggering visa rejections on grounds of ideological sensitivity. This isn't just bureaucracy, it's a message. India is done playing the colonial understudy. It's asserting its modern power with the same tools once used against it: paperwork, policy, and pride. What we're witnessing isn't just about immigration policies, it's a powerful shift in global identity, influence, and independence. These 10 countries didn't just close their doors on British citizens, they opened a deeper conversation about history, fairness, and the future of international respect, whether it's political retaliation, economic strategy, or cultural protection. Each move reflects a world where the UK's global footprint is being re-examined, and in some cases, erased. And let's be honest, this list may only be the beginning. More countries could follow, more borders could close, more lives could be uprooted overnight. So here's the question: is this justice or revenge? Is it about sovereignty, or is it just diplomacy turning personal? We want to know what you think. But don't just drop a great vid. Tell us which country's decision shocked you the most, or share your thoughts on whether this trend is justified or dangerous. Your comments actually help shape future videos and discussions here. We pour hours of research, writing, and editing into each video. So if you learned something new today, hit that subscribe button. It's just one click but means the world to us. And hey, your next favourite video might already be waiting. Check it out now.